The following show is intended for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome back. Coffee with the Johns. Friday, April the 30th. We're already at the end of April. Woo! This year's going by quick.
Wait, what's the date?
April 30th. What?
It's just like, it's like end of April already. Like, we're already third of the way through the year. Like,
Yeah.
what? Blink of an eye. Gone.
No,
Blink of an eye. I'm 32. Like, holy shit.
Yeah. Anyway, got a lot going on. A lot of cool articles, a lot of real estate stuff that we're going to be covering today, and we're going to be talking about how the Texas population is exploding.
Texas number one. Texas number one.
If you're in real estate or business in general, this is some interesting news. Some things that you need to keep an eye on because it's very important towards.
Good news if you're in business or real estate. Nothing more you want than an expanding economy for business and especially real estate.
We'll talk about the good and the bad of it. And then Texas, the census came out, and Texas is the number one state by a large margin on the top states that people want to go to. So that have moved to. So Texas has grown and is number one by a very large margin. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to be covering a lot of government inefficiencies. All right.
A lot of, you mean the entire thing? Like, I don't know. Like, I would like
quite a bit of it.
I would actually like to hear people's opinions. Like, what part of the government is actually efficient? Like, name one department or something like, no, this actually runs pretty smoothly.
Charging you when you're late on your taxes. That comes very prompt.
That's true. I guess
when
that's
true.
When they
need money, that
you,
bill hits quick.
Fire tax, you were a day late. That's a day of interest.
Yep.
There's no grace period. Like,
nope.
That triggers into that collecting
like,
money. They are efficient.
Do I get interest when you
money.
take months to give me my money back?
Not processing money, but they make sure they get their pound of flesh.
Yeah. So we have all that going on. For those of you that don't know, this probably this afternoon, I'm gonna be doing another property tour. So if you're in Texas, in San Antonio area, we're going to be walking one of the properties that is hitting the market that we just finished. So make sure to text property tour to 210-794-9898. And I'll let you know when we're heading out there and what the address is. So you can meet us there and we can walk the property. You can see what we did and what the strategy is on that deal. Also, make sure you join the Real Estate Investing the Right Way Facebook group, as we are always putting information out there. There's a lot of investors. You can ask questions if you're struggling, if you're trying to figure something out. A great place to get resources. So with that being said, I actually wanted to start off with something that I find that is useful and valuable to everybody in here. Is we had a commentator on a market update that you've done.
Oh, I just read that. That's actually really good.
I think he disagrees a little bit. So his first comment was, what? Is this guy dumb or lying? When does one buying into any market? When low, not high. Investments 101.
He's
Sorry.
talking about me.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm dumb or lying.
Yeah, you're dumb or lying.
Screw
So
that guy.
you know, he definitely knows you. So
wow.
I responded.
I get no back up from my partner here. I get it.
So I responded. I told him, I was like, "Are you saying that you shouldn't buy into the Texas market?" He says, "Yes. Never buy into any market, stocks, bonds, real estate when the prices are at all-time highs. Investing 101, young man. Live and learn." So
live and learn.
We kind of went back and forth a little bit. I definitely kept everything as cordial as possible because I don't like being confrontational when I'm trying to understand somebody else's point of view. So what makes you feel so strong that your initial comment is calling you dumb or lying? To me, that's a strong, statement, a strong opinion. That's like, all right, well, I want to see your point. Like, what do you feel that we're lying on and all of that? So he's saying that we're in an all-time high. It's stupid to buy in Texas. And I wanted to cover this because I think it's very important for people to understand. We go off of data, off of actual data and numbers. This isn't going off of gut feelings or opinions. It's actual data. And what the data is showing is that it is not dumb we are not at we are at an all-time high, but that doesn't mean that it
why are
can't
we at all-time high?
it can't go any higher. You understand? Like it's not showing any signs of a bubble. It's not showing any signs of saying, look, this is extremely overvalued market. You know, it's not worth it. These houses, it makes no sense. There's no jobs, there's no growth, there's no economic drivers.
Well, to
Like
combat
there
that,
is.
I look at it, it's like, go look at all of my market reports I've ever done. Technically, we've been at an all-time high every market update I've ever done because we've always had a year-over-year price increase.
Yep.
It's like all-time high. It's like we've been at all-time high since 2013 when prices started rising again.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we went down, we came back up. So I'd say 2014. We've been at all-time highs ever since. So you're saying like you shouldn't have bought in 2014, and now a house back in 2014 that was worth 120 is now worth 200 because we're at all-time highs. You just lost out on that entire gain.
Well, and then so he kind of flip-flopped a little bit. He went into saying how the biggest problem that we're seeing is that we're seeing out-of-state buyers come in. They're selling their shack in California or Seattle or whatever for like $1 million, and they're coming over here and they're overbidding for houses, right? A house is listed for 200, they're paying an extra 20 grand. 30 grand, you know, 400 grand, they're paying an extra 50 grand. Like they're putting down extra money. And he's like, this is taking away inventory from local Texans that don't have that kind of capital, right? And it's like that I agree with 100%. That is happening.
Oh, for
you
sure.
understand? But again,
People are getting priced out.
That is facts, right? That's not opinion. That is facts. That is happening. Granted. But what does that have to do with it's not smart to invest? Because I told him, I was like, we have 12 rentals and we are doing very well right now. He's like, well, I'm happy for your 12 rentals, but I say sell.
You will never regret it. Like, oh, yeah. I think I would regret it.
And it's like going back to, I believe we talked about this before, but we had a friend back in, 2017 that he pulled out of the stock market, right? Yeah. Because it's at an all-time high. It's going to tank. This is it. I know.
Oh, man.
He was definitely kicking his ass just a year later, right? Because it never tanked. So my whole thing is that you got to look at the data. You got to look at the actual numbers at what is actually happening. Because if you're right now sitting on the sidelines, not looking to get into real estate investing because you're like, it's at an all-time high. You know, this has to crash. Why?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, like, why do you feel this has to crash? Just because it's high? That doesn't mean anything.
Well, I mean, his only thing was that he was obviously in the mortgage industry.
Yes.
Because he says what here, after nearly 40 years of being in mortgage banking, a reckoning is inevitable. Ask me about mortgage forbearance. I was like, okay, I will ask you more mortgage forbearance. And he even goes into the detail about it in the next comment. There are currently 2.8 million mortgages in the program, most of which would have come foreclosed had it not been implemented.
Yes.
Then it's also like, yes, 2.8 million. I think the market needs that 2.8 million houses to be put on the market because that even might bring us a little bit closer to some level of like normalcy. It's
even
like, how do you that's my next comment. Be like, okay, 2.8 million. We're 7 million houses short of housing in the market to bring us back to a balanced market. So 2.8 million to what we're short, we're still short housing. Yep. As like we're still below the supply and demand, so prices will not appreciate as fast, but they still will continue to increase.
And that's the stuff that like we've covered on Coffee with the Johns before. So I know if you guys are watching and you've been watching, you're like, John, come on. We know this. We're smart. We're watching you guys every Friday. So we're very well educated. Good. But just in case you're not, and this is your first time watching, you know, this is something that you need to keep in mind is that we talked about the data. Out of the 2.8 million houses or owners that are in forbearance, they were talking about, what was it, like it was well under 5% of those homes
total mortgages
are worth market value. That means that they pretty much owe what the house is worth. Yeah. Everybody else has equity in their house. And right now, what is it that we are seeing that just a week goes by and the house is appreciated another 5 to 10 grand, depending on your price point? Right? Like, it's nuts. Where we're saying we're getting delays, let's say, on a house because of we got to do a landscape or whatever. It's like, well, we just made more money because it's
it's really a serious question that I wanted to have with you sometime about like the properties we do have. It's like, when do we sell? Because it's also one of the things like I think the prices are going to continue to go up. But so do we not sell on the houses that, because I mean, even though we're paying the interest points we're paying on the thing, like year over year, like we might be paying 10% on, let's say 100, but we've bought, like the house is worth 180. Well, if it goes up 10% and we're paying 10%, but we're still gaining $8,000 in value there because it's 10% on 180 versus 10% on 100.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things, it's like, and it's a compounding on the backside. So it's like, when do you sell? If you're ready to sell, like a property that you're flipping, and you're not planning on holding it or anything like that, it's like, I'm fine sitting on it, but for how long do you sit on it for? So it's kind of a serious question.
You gotta, like always, right? You gotta run your numbers. At what point does it become more of a hindrance than anything? So like, you have a property. Properties don't like to sit vacant, right?
Yeah.
When they sit vacant, they get vandalized, shit breaks, the plumbing starts acting up because it's not being used. I mean, you have a lot of issues that happen when a house sits vacant. So that's your number one problem. Number two is your funding. Where is your funding, right? Are you going to have to pay penalties for extending and things like that? So that comes into place. And then you look at just your time of it. Like, all right, holding on to this property, how much time is it taking of me to just hold on to it versus if I just put it on the market, capitalize my gains, and move on to the next deal. So that's kind of when you're flipping. But when you're doing a buy and hold, I mean, I think at this point, and kind of going back to this guy, I'm guessing it's a guy. I don't know, because it's, YouTube handles and I don't know. So I'll just call him Steve. So according to Steve, right, like we're at an all-time high, but it's like at some point, California was where we are, right? At some point, their homes that are now selling for millions were worth 200 grand, 300 grand, right? And it might have seemed like they were an all-time high, yet now they're selling for $1 million. And guess what? They're still not going down. I'm still not hearing that California's prices are tanking. They might be tanking in certain markets in California, but overall, I'm still hearing like California prices are going up even more. So when you're saying it's too high, so it has to come down, that logic doesn't make sense.
And then it's just like, I mean, he did point out to his fact of he comes from the mortgage banking industry. So obviously he lived through 2008 and he has that recency bias towards it. And then the 2.8 million properties are in foreclosure. It's like, okay, if you focus on 2.8 million, you're like, oh my God, that's a lot of homes. But you have to look at the percentages, look into the data. Don't just read the headline. Find different articles where we found that like it was only 5% of all the mortgages that FHA insures are in forbearance. And then of those, only 5% of the 5% are actually quote unquote underwater if they tried to sell. So it's showing that they have plenty of equity to sell if they wanted to. And then just look at the information of like, why is the Texas growing so much? Well, we get in the census data here shortly. You're going to see why very quickly, why it is going up so drastically.
So to wrap up like this kind of, these comments from Steve is he seems to obviously be upset. I seriously doubt that he is an investor. He seems to be upset because, like many people, it's very hard for people to buy properties right now. It's very hard for them to find it. They're getting outbid left and right. And especially if you're trying to buy off the MLS, you're pretty much not finding anything that's going to make any kind of sense.
I'm seeing stuff on Broker Underground on Facebook where people that's like, they're desperate. Just like, I have a fully approved FHA buyer. It's like not just like pre-approved, actually gone through the underwriting process and everything. And so they've been outbid on it's like we're putting best and highest offers we possibly can on everything, and they can't find a house. They're just pleading for it. And it's like, that is like a perfectly good buyer. But because of the type of financing they have, the FHA buyers like, I'm not taking an FHA buyer. Like if I'm getting conventional mortgages, it's like, I'm doing that. That person needs to go and figure out how to get a conventional mortgage to be more competitive. It's like it's either credit score or low down payment. Two things that make it a risk for our side, the seller, that's like, that person could fall through at any moment because they're already at a shaky ground.
Yeah.
So I feel bad for him. But
and also, like, I mean, this kind of brings up the next point, right? Us greedy ass investors that are jacking up these prices.
Oh, God.
So, you spoke recently to an agent that she says, if you have a property around 200 grand, she'll take it up. She'll buy it, right? Because that's what she's looking to buy and all this. So to a lot of investors, it's like, cool. That's, I have a property coming up. I'm going to price it that. That's pretty much a done deal. But where we are in the market, it's like, yeah, that is the value of the house, but I know if I put it on the market, it's probably going to get bid up by 10, 15, maybe $20,000.
Yeah.
Right? So you're saying, oh, you're pushing up the prices. We're not pushing up shit. We're pricing it at what it is, that there's buyers willing to pay more for it.
Yeah.
What are we really
Like,
just
I'm
not
not-
supposed to sell it?
Yeah, it's like, oh no, I won't accept the 230, even though I want 210.
Yeah.
So you need to lower your price.
What I like is how people act so high and mighty about all these things and greed and everything. Yet, you know, let's oversimplify it. They're putting something on like Facebook Marketplace or some shit for sale, right? And they put it up for $50, and somebody comes in and then gets into a bidding war. Are they gonna tell them, no? The fair price for this is $50, and I'm only selling it for $50. I don't care that you're offering me $80. I'm only selling it for $50.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many.
I mean, that's
people
a
would
perfect
actually
analogy
do
when
that
somebody
shit.
says it, like, "Oh, you greedy developers." Like, all right, well, you post something. That's exactly that.
Yeah.
Post something in Marketplace. You get 100. And I approach you and say, "I'll give you 150 for it," because somebody else said they'll give you 120. You're gonna take the 120 over the 150? Well, no, that's just stupid. How is that two different scenarios?
Because what you got to understand is that the market moves in trends, right?
Yeah.
And we are a business. We're not a nonprofit. We are not just like money is just pouring into us. So when we have these hot opportunities, we need to, as a business, be able to capitalize on them so we can build up for the lean times, because the lean times will come eventually. Housing inventory will start picking up. Eventually, more and more people are going to put houses on the market. These things are not going to happen anymore. Then houses, you're going to price them at 200, and they're going to sell at 200.
Well, because also say housing prices, like that means we're also paying more for our inventory. It's like
Oh,
that
of
means
course.
like our gain was somebody else's gain when we bought this house. Instead of paying 100 for the house, I bought it for 140 because instead of selling it for 200, I sold it for 240.
Yeah.
So like it's a straight pass through. So it's like we make our money on the margin in between.
Yeah.
And it's like just because like the prices are going up doesn't mean we're making more money. It's easy to think we are, but it's also like that means the price of everything else that we involved to get us to that point went up as well.
Yeah.
Unless we've been holding on to it for 10 years on a rental property, now you're saying, okay, yeah, I got a huge gain on it. But if you're just like buying and selling like transactionally within less than a year, it's like it's a straight pass through. And whatever we bought it for, somebody else gained on that. Because they owned it for a long time.
And I was just seeing a comment right now from Frank that he puts in Austin, they are calling it the Leapfrog effect. Homes that were $450K are now $550K, and homes that were $550K are now $650K. The hottest selling homes are still in the $200 to $350K range. I didn't even know they had a range like that in Austin still. What is that?
I was like, what are you buying in Austin for 200 grand? Like every time I go and look at it, it's like 500,000. Like what?
Yeah, you saw like when you did the Texas market update for the quarter back in March. What was Austin? The median price was like 500 or some shit like that. Like that's nuts.
I think you just have to go further and further and further out to get to those price ranges.
Right. Yeah. You got to, but I mean, at that point, like it's very crazy to see where the market, but again, going back to the same point is you got to look at the data, guys, because if you're sitting on the sidelines right now, hoping and waiting for the market to crash, first of all, right now, as of April 30th, 2021, there are no signs that the Texas real estate market will crash right now. Could there be something macro that happens, right? Macro means worldwide, United States wide, another virus, an opposite virus that staying inside a house is bad for your health. I don't know. Something crazy happens, then yeah, I mean, at that point, everything's going to take a hit. But that being said, like, there's no actual sound facts or stats to show that just because we are at all-time highs means that we're not going to go higher or we can't go higher. For all we know, this is going to be like the bottom of the next trend, right? Where this is like, man, I remember when houses were selling for $220K, and now they're selling for $300 because guess what?
Well, then it's also, if you're trying to think of housing that way, like stocks and bonds and stuff like that, then you shouldn't be trying to buy a house.
Yeah.
Unless you're like a professional investor or something like that. But if you're looking from a homeowner's perspective, it's like if you're looking at that because you're thinking like, oh, in the next year my prices could go down. You don't buy a house thinking you're going to live in it for a year or 2. It's like if you're buying a house like a homestead, you better be planning on staying there for 5 years.
Yep.
And just like and hope that like because I mean over a 5-year period there has only been one time in history where prices went down. Maybe not history, but recent history where prices went down over a 5-year period. And I think even in Texas, like it still wasn't down drastically over that time frame.
Well, we've
like,
analyzed over a 10-year period, going back, I think, like 80 plus years, over a 10-year period. Doesn't matter what 10 years you pick, even if you picked, starting in 2007 that you bought, like right at the peak to 2017, like houses always go up.
Yeah.
In a 10-year period, houses always go up.
But then there's the argument, well, that was because interest rates dropped. And like, yeah, interest rates
did drop, but whatever you want to use
to,
justify it, they still go up.
It's like, I'm not going to bet against the powers that be that control the world monetary system.
Exactly.
Even though they say, well, they have no tools left in their tool belt. They'll come up with new ones. Like, and they always do. They always have.
The population is growing. It's not getting smaller, right? Yeah. People divide. They multiply, I mean. So people are multiplying consistently. That means more people after less land because we're not producing more land.
Can't produce.
So
unless Elon Musk comes out to build platforms in the sky for more
or Mars
or Mars.
But so that's kind of the things that you got to understand and analyze when you're looking at the market. This is not the time to sit on the sidelines because you could find yourself on the sidelines for the next 5 years, 10 years. You don't know.
Well, I mean,
right?
it's just one of the things you hear that about people that are from the industry in like the early 2000s that were used to or been through several market cycles or been through several things of a housing and prices increases to where it's like they're using their experience. And I mean, it's good, you should, but it's also, you can't be stuck in the old ways of the world, way the world used to be and try to use that to analyze today's market. Like you need to adapt your investment strategy of the current market environment using your past experiences. Right. But a lot of times they get stuck with their old past experiences and they stay there.
Well, you and I have studied many economic books and economics themselves and all these things that happened in the past. And one thing that we are always seeing is that shit is always changing. Like you can't use that, when I first started in real estate, they used to talk about the, 5-year, 7-year cycle, right? It will go up, it will come down, it will go up. That's the cycle, the real estate market, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
That hasn't been the case. That has not been the case since like the bottom in 2009, that we haven't come back down again. There hasn't been a cycle. And you can try to justify it being a cycle in like certain micro markets in this area or that area, but you got to look at it as an overall. So as an overall, if those trends are no longer holding true, then what the hell are you doing? You know what I mean? Like you can't do that shit. Like you can't analyze that way. Like it makes, you're hurting yourself. So with that being said, there is an article that kind of builds on this that is called San Antonio Sees Influx of Out-of-State Renters from a Study. So as many Texans remain aghast, I don't know what that word is. Hopefully you guys do.
Yeah,
at the staggering census numbers showing that the state's population growth, a new study finds that more than a third of renters who moved to San Antonio last year did indeed come from different states. So they said compared to other big Texas cities, the highest one has been Austin, has been the biggest magnet of Texas for out-of-state renters, with about 40% of renters relocating to Austin last year coming from different states. That compares to 30% for Houston, 24% for Fort Worth, 21% for Dallas, and 15% for Arlington. Houston ranks 5th among the country's top attractors for all renters in 2020. Almost 70% of Houston renters came from other places in Texas. 70% of Houston renters, so came from other places in Texas.
Okay, I read that wrong too.
Yeah, with Katy topping the list at 8.8%.
I like how Katie's like, Katy, Texas is basically Houston. It's like, it's right there.
Yeah. 2 notches down, you see Dallas at number 7 and with 6.4%. Austin, number 11. Round Rock at 6.1%. And San Antonio came in at number 12 with the city of Converse led the way for Alamo City's income and renters. City of Commerce. Converse. That's
like Converse isn't that big either.
Yeah.
As I think of Converse, but I guess, I mean, I drive out there. I have a property out there. I manage one. And I mean, there's a lot of housing out there because it's basically like,
and there's more being built.
Well, I think it's also like what Converse is like. Converse, like, if it was its own city, would be way smaller. Converse is big because it's connected to San Antonio, so that's where a lot of land was at. A lot of new homes were built there in the last 5-10 years. So I think that's why there's so much population out there. But like the city of Converse, like I don't even know. There's like where's their downtown? Like where's like the municipalities? It's like
Main Street.
I've gone there to like the municipality to get like water and things turned on, but
it's just that like you have the proximity to San Antonio. That's like, where's your downtown? Well, it's San Antonio. You know what I mean? You go to San Antonio, you're right there. But it keeps showing the same thing. So for you, those of you that are investors and not in the mortgage industry, you got to look at these out of the state renters. They're paying a lot for rent. They're bumping up rentals an insane amount. You know what I mean? Like it's just going up. We've been seeing it where we're actually starting to run comps the same way that we run comps for properties we're going to sell by usually looking at solds. But right now, when we're going to list a property, we're looking at what's active. Because if there's nothing active, like there's no inventory.
What's supply and demand?
Exactly. So, you know, even though you ran your comp and it was worth 180, that house is probably going to sell for 210 now. You understand? Because there's no more demand. And appraisers, when they look, they got to go further out. And, you know, in the banks, if somebody qualifies with conventional.
It's becoming a huge issue. And like we covered, I think, last week or the week before about the appraisal gap. Of like appraisers look at real time looking in the past. But they're not looking at, or they're not even looking at real time. They're looking at past solds, like the way it's done, to where like you're having these huge gaps. Where I know it's even worse out like in California and stuff, where you have your $1 million homes, to where it's like, there's prices are coming in $100,000 low. Yeah, because they're looking past. Like I know it's a huge issue here. It's a percentage, so 10% here is like on a 200,000 house, 20 grand. But out there, it's like no, it's $100,000 in difference. Where it's like you have to have that cash to cover that gap if you're going to take it. And that's one thing people are waiving is the appraisal contingencies. Yeah. So that's
because they have the cash. They are coming in with the cash. They are willing to pay that difference, you know, especially if you're giving them a half decent house. I mean, they're all in, you know, and that's the stuff that we're seeing. And that's the stuff that we're seeing with rentals as well. When you're running your comps on rentals, you got to look at what's available. If you're seeing, you know, typically rents in this area are $1,400. But you're going out and you're not finding anything for rent. Supply and demand. There is nothing for rent. You understand? Like, you know, if you want to still charge $1,400, by all means. But
I mean, I guess it's one thing as like investors, like we're good at doing is finding that supply and demand equilibrium.
Of course.
Or it's like we just don't feel like, if we look at the MLS, this should rent for this. It's like, well, the MLS anymore, it doesn't make sense to rent things on the MLS anymore. Like I don't put things on there. I was like, for $9 a week, I'd rather put on Zillow. I get way more activity on Zillow than I do because, like, for an agent, we're not incentivized to represent tenants because it's a lot of paperwork, a lot of headache for a very small amount of money. Yeah. So like they usually just don't do it. So like if you're doing it that way, like you're gonna underperform. You're gonna get your stuff rented out right away. But instead of renting it for $1,350 like the comps say, and we're getting $1,450 is what the market would have paid, it's like that's a $1,200 difference. So I guess as investors, we do look at the whole grand scheme of things and find that where we think the equilibrium is at. Yeah. Where if like, hey, if it's been 2 weeks and we're not getting what we want, it's like, let's lower the price a little bit to get the price that we're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we're seeing that in and out of everything that we're doing. And why don't you cover that article that you were talking about the census? Because, I mean, all of that plays a big effect into all this shit.
Texas explodes with 16% surge in population, new census data shows. So, and this is one of the things I say, like Texas is growing. It's like there's nothing more that like if you want just an investor 101 of just like basics of what to do, look at where people are moving to. Like that, there's nothing worse for a real estate market than a declining population. Well, there's nothing better, or there's probably more things that are better, but an influx of people is a huge advantage to real estate. So Texas population swelled so much from 2010 to 2020 that it essentially swallowed a state the size of Oklahoma.
Oh man.
That's how they start. This is like,
Jesus.
oh my God. Figures released April 26th by the U.S. Census Bureau showed Texas gained 3,999,944 residents. What's that? Like 56 people short of 4 million residents. I was like, you couldn't just fudge the number a little bit just to get that 4 million from April 2010 to April 2020. By comparison, the entire population of Oklahoma totaled 3,959,000 in April 2020. Those nearly 4 million new residents brought Texas population to 29,144,505 as of April 2020. Buoyed by a spike in the Hispanic population and an influx of out-of-state and international arrivals, Texas led the nation for the sheer number of residents added for the every 10-year headcount in 2010 to the headcount in 2020. The growth of Texas was a little bit slower than expected. That's what shocked me. It's like they were expecting more.
Yeah.
Like that's just what's crazy, which may be a function of low fertility rates post-Great Recession and slower international migration. Lloyd Potter, the Texas state demographer. Meanwhile, Texas holds the number 3 position for percentage population growth from 2010 to 2020, according to the Census Bureau. The state's population shot up by 15.9% during that period, behind only Utah and Idaho. So it's like you look at Utah and Idaho, they're not like big population states.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like on a percentage basis, yeah, we're low. But when you're looking at 29 million people and that many people moving here, it's crazy. By contrast, California saw its population climbed by just 6.1% from 2010 to 2020. And Texas is expected to surpass California's population by 2045. As a result of population shifts across the country, Texas will pick up 2 seats in the state house, bringing the total to 38, the Census Bureau says. 5 states will add 1 seat each: Colorado, Florida, Montana, North Carolina, and Oregon. 7 states will lose 1 state each: California, Illinois, Michigan, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. And I just kind of want to look at this, and it's like, okay, so what was number 2 and number 3 as far as like numbers of people moving there? So it was Florida was number 2. And California was number 3 as far as like adding people. So keep in mind, Texas was just shy of 4 million. Mm-hmm. Number 2, Florida only gained 2.7 million.
Yeah.
So like we had over 50% gain over the number 2, and California only added 2.2. So it's like we are well over, as far as like the number of people we're gaining is absolutely insane over a 10-year period. And that's why they're saying by like 2045, the way these numbers are going, like it's going to continue to rise. And they will eventually surpass California, which is currently the number 1 state. So like go ahead and figure by 2030, if that trend continues, it's like your Texas is going to continue to pick up seats, and a lot of these other states are going to continue to lose.
My thing is, why are people moving here, right? Why is it that they're coming to Texas?
They like our tumbleweeds and riding camel.
I mean,
riding
and
horses
this
everywhere.
is not for people to get offended, but Texas isn't like a beautiful state. You know what I mean? Like you have, let's say, California, right? That you have so much.
It depends what you classify as beautiful, John.
I don't classify the desert as beautiful.
Some people do.
That's what I'm saying.
And this isn't the desert. West Texas is a desert.
Sure.
We're the hill
anyway,
country.
So whatever bushes we have here that are considered trees. But all kidding aside, like Texas isn't, it isn't California. It isn't Colorado where you have your ski resorts, all these things. Why is it that everybody's coming here? It's policies, politics, job opportunity, affordability, right? Now, this kind of touches into a little bit of the common theme of the government inefficiencies, right? It's the shit that's like, it's forcing people out of these other states, because it is forcing. Like, nobody likes to move to another state just for the heck of it.
I will admit, like, California is like a beautiful state, and the climate there in like Southern California is fantastic, and I would take that any day over here.
Yeah.
Like, but all the other factors of these other states,
actually
like,
living there,
the homeless, the high taxes, like the business regulations, like the all of the stuff they have going on out there. It's like, no, I don't want to do it.
So
not worth it.
So my thing is like they're coming to these states, Texas being number 1, Florida being number 2. You look at their policies, you look at everything. It's like they're not fleeing because of the weather. They're not moving in one of the biggest economic crises that we had in quite some time because they're like, oh no, I just want to change the scenery. You understand? Like the risk on that is very high. They're moving because they're being forced to, right? There's no jobs. It's not affordable. The policies, taxes, all these things. Yet they keep going with these same policies, you know, or they're here in Texas, like they're fighting like Abbott, you know, and I'm not, you know, we're getting into like local election time for mayors and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, remember to vote on Saturday. That's the last day to vote if you haven't voted.
Yeah, so we have local elections, we have all that. It's like people are coming here because the shit that we're doing is working.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? Like, does nobody else see this?
Well, it's the changes Texas has had for several years, and it was in the business where they wanted to be a business friendly state, because after I think it was like the save and loan crisis of the 80s, like Texas got hit hard from that, and it's like we need to change our business, our philosophies, our tax systems to bring businesses back and remake our economy. And I mean, to Brian Pauling's point here is about the newcomers are changing Texas traditional systems, and they are. And it's like you look at like California was an awesome place to be in the 1970s and 80s, but in the 70s and 80s with all the influx of population, it strained the economics, the system, to where they had to create policies to accommodate these new people for new roads, new systems to accommodate those things.
Yeah.
And that's where taxes rise, and that's like that cycle that that states and municipalities and politicians, economies take over long periods of times. Like the top dog doesn't stay top dog forever. Eventually, a top dog gets there, gets greedy, overtaxes, overregulates, and a state like Texas comes up. In the next 30, 40 years, I expect the whole system to change, and the kind of what happened in California is going to happen in Texas, but differently. It's like it's going to change, but it's like I don't think it's going to follow the exact same path. It's like you look back in history, every crisis has similarities, but they aren't alike, they rhyme. So we're like, that's how the cycle goes, to where like in 20, 30 years, those situations are going to change, and like Texas isn't going to be the number one anymore. So it's going to be somewhere else.
One thing that I don't agree with is that it's going to take 20 to 30 years. You're using historical data, right? But that's where my point is that this isn't, nothing that we're seeing now matches to any historical data
but
at all.
That's said 2030 versus 40 and 50 like it took California. It took 40, 50 years for California to do what they did.
Yeah.
And now we're going to do it in 20 and 30. I was like, it is speeding up.
Yeah. So, I mean, I look at it, I just look at how much Texas has changed in the last 8 years that I've been here, right? As far as policies and politics goes and everything, it's changed drastically in just 8 years. So I'm looking at it in the next 10 years, we're probably going to see a very, very big shift. We're already pretty much, we're already a purple state, and we're pretty much like right there on the edge of like going blue. And we've been getting there every election. We're getting there by that much faster. So I'm looking at Texas being there a lot sooner than 20 years. You know what I mean? Like getting not to the point of California, of course, but crossing that threshold where it becomes of a blue state and it starts trending that way.
We're not purple yet. Florida's purple. Florida's flip-flopped on elections multiple times. Texas hasn't. It's like it's red across the board.
It's red by barely, and it's not across the board. But all the major metros,
no. I'm saying like the political spectrum is across the board. Like our state legislature, our way we vote for presidencies is red across the board on a national scale.
Yeah, but what I'm going back is like you look at the trends. Every election, we've been getting closer and closer on those margins.
Yeah.
Where
I agree.
It's not red wins by a large margin. It's like red barely got through.
We're not purple yet, but we're very quickly becoming.
And my thing is like, again, this is not a red or blue conversation. It's just a policy conversation, and you know, the inefficiencies, right? Yeah. So one of the articles I had on there it's titled, "It was just a mess. Texas rental relief program has distributed about 3% of its $1 billion allowment." I think that's how you pronounce it. Over the past 2 months, Ron, a Northwest San Antonio resident, said he applied 3 separate times to the Texas rental relief program. Do you think this is the mayor, Ron? A $1 billion state effort funded by emergency federal aid that is meant to minimize evictions by providing financial assistance to renters and landlords. So when the crisis happened, this was given out. So if you are a a renter that's falling behind on your rent, you're able to apply for this, and they're going to give you assistance so you can take care of your rental payments, I think utilities, and a few other things that they were going to be able to help you out with. After calling a hotline for the program for more than a month with no response, he said he finally received an email last week that his application had been accepted. Though he is still waiting for payment, Ron said the email gave his landlord hope, and he likely would have been evicted if not for the 11th hour approval. So the combination of unaware tenants and landlords, early issues of an antiquated, difficult to navigate website, and the extensive documentation required, including a copy of the lease, past utility bills, proof of income reduction, and proof of government benefits, made him think many of Texas' most vulnerable renters never found or finished their Texas Rent Relief Program application. I stayed on top of it, but I know other people probably gave up. And he said it was just a mess. So far, the state has given out 3.1% of their $1.17 billion budget to about 5,000 households. The TRRP, the program, has given out $36.7 million of its $1.7 billion budget. The money went to 5,100 households, represents 5% of the 102,000 submitted applications.
Jesus.
102,000 submitted applications, and they've only hit 5% of that. Almost 40,000 applications are in some stage of review, either waiting for missing documentation or in a final review before payment is approved. And like this guy said, he just recently received an email saying that he was approved, but still no money. So yeah, you've been approved, but now how long do they have to wait until they actually get the money? And this causes pressure on the landlord, on everybody. Most of the applicants are poor, below 80% of their area's median income, and have been unemployed for at least 90 days prior to submitting an application. Like Ron, the renter in San Antonio, many of those submitting applications are on the verge of eviction and homelessness. The Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs Director Bobby Wilkinson, Mr. Wilson, in an interview on April 13, that the issue had been largely addressed. He says, "We have an aggressive ramp up and we're getting great results. I think we've tripled from a week ago and we're north of $1 million distributed a day right now. I think it's $1.2, $1.3 million per day and climbing. I expect to be multiple millions per day pretty soon." Since the widely reported March 31 numbers that showed Texas had only given out money to 250 families. So March 31st, they had only given out money to 250 families statewide.
What?
They had increased staffing to about 1,300 people and is averaging around $2 million per day. During the week of April 19th, said they approved funds for more than 2,500 households. So
wait a minute.
March 31st.
March 31st, that's got to be a typo. Since widely reported March 31st numbers that showed Texas had only given out money to 250 families statewide.
Yeah.
TDHCA increased staffing to about 1,300 people.
Yeah.
They have 1,300 people working there, and they only got they only had 250 families get it, and then they increased to 1,300 people.
So here's my thing, right? I heard part of President Biden's address to Congress on Wednesday, I believe. So I heard part of it and everything. And here's what aggravates me. And this is with all politicians. This is just not with Biden. It's with Trump. Pick your president. They've all done it.
Left or right.
But this is what's aggravating. What is the biggest thing? We need a new bill for this. We need a new bill for that. We need a bill for this, a bill for that, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, stop coming up with these freaking bills, and why don't you fix what's already in place that's not working?
Well, you have to put new bills to fix the old bills.
But no, I'm saying the bills that were put in place were never executed to its intent.
Well, yeah,
because they're so inefficient.
You got to create a new bill to fix the old bills.
But you got to create a new bill
Yeah.
to do what the first bill was supposed to do because you didn't do that one
That's
right.
how lawmakers work. They can't fix things. They have to do it by legislation. Like they can't just go and say, oh, we screwed that up. We got to redo this bill.
No. I'm not saying they screwed it up. I'm saying they wrote a bill that they were going to do A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Okay? They did part of A.
Yeah.
And now that they're writing a bill saying, no, we need to do D, E, and F, where it's like, what about B and C? Well, you haven't even completed the first bill.
They miswrote A.
Yeah.
Because B can't happen, so they got to write a whole new bill to scrap the whole thing. That's why government's so inefficient. It's like you got to do it.
Exactly.
You can't do anything without legislative approval of the whole process.
But you don't need legislative approval to do what you've already approved, just making sure that it's being done.
Yeah, but you do.
It's bullshit.
It's like that's how it works. I mean, it's retarded because like I'm dealing with the city right now for some of the stuff, and it's like we're legally required to post this thing by this date at this time for this one thing. And I was like, and I missed it by 3 minutes. I was like, there's no leeway to anything. It's like it's what we have to do legally. It's like because they legally do that, and like if they wrote a bill,
what a surprise, you were late.
And there was a piece in that bill that says like, well, we had this great idea. And we wrote a bill to do it, but when it came to implementing it, that actually didn't work in practicality. So it's where it's like you have lawmakers working in theory, and then you have the practicality of how the things actually work. Well, when they realize like, oh, in theory, this didn't work. So now we got to come up with a new bill based on theory, on what we learned of how practicality of the first bill worked, to write a new bill to create the old one to make them go away.
Yeah.
But then it's like they never repeal old bills. They just build on top of new bills. So it's just like, that's the problem is you create all of these like antiquated laws.
They're like the hoarders of bills. I mean, they're just hoarding bills because it's this level of inefficiency. It's like they keep asking for more money. Oh, we need more money to help the homelessness. We need more money to help this. We need more money. You already have money to do this that you can't even deploy yet because you don't have the systems in place to deploy it correctly. Why not work on the systems before you keep asking for more policies? Because all these policies do is just waste more time. They take longer to implement. You got to wait for elections. You got to wait for all the shit where it's like, okay, while you're waiting for all that nonsense, why don't you actually do what was passed?
Well, that's what I said. Like, that's the difference of, because it wasn't passed. You think it was passed, but it wasn't. Like, you think the headline made it passed. When they read the bills through,
no.
something was wrong with it.
You're not understanding what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they're not doing what hasn't been written. I'm saying it has been written. It's been written. This is the bill. They haven't executed it yet because they don't have the systems. They don't have the people.
Because it hasn't been written into a bill. They don't have the money. They don't have the funding.
You
they
don't
have
understand.
the election. I don't think.
No, listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm telling you. They created a bill. It passed.
Yeah.
It's gone through.
Yeah.
It's got the funding. Yeah. It's got everything it needs to go. They're not doing it because they don't have the people. They don't have the systems.
Why don't they have the people? Because it's not written into the bill, because they don't have the funding to say, oh, we're going to direct this department to create this. Well, this department goes, well, yeah, but we need money from that department. And that department needs money from these people to implement the applications to create the systems to do it. Well, we can't take on applications because our systems are so old.
So then who the hell's creating these bills then?
Exactly. That's what I said. That is why the private sector will always move faster than the public sector, because public works on votes, public opinions, and public funding. So they have to have approval from all those people along the ways. So that's why like government always gets trounced by the private sectors, because you and I think private sector wise, saying like, oh, we have issues over here, let's go over and fix this real quick. But they can't. They can't just jump from one thing to another. So like
I'm not even saying jump from one thing. I'm just saying do what the bill said you were going to do.
They do the bill, but they didn't realize that that bill impacted this other department that is underfunded. Well, it's like, well, we need more funding to make this bill work. It's like, oh, crap, now we got to create a bill to do this thing over here. I was like, well, yeah, now we can release the funding and we can hire more people. But the problem is our website to bring in applicants was written in 2000. So it gets bogged down by these things.
So they need a bill to fix the website now.
Now they need a bill. They need to get the money approved, but the money doesn't get approved until budget election times come around. They can't just make money appear and move things around. There's very little leeway because it's public money. Everything has to be voted on. There's processes and legal things for everything. That's why it gets so frustrating. Why when I was working for company out of college and they were in the government, we were building a Lackland Air Force Base and the government was involved. It was so frustrating. It's just like, why is this so difficult? It's common sense. And that's when somebody explained it to me that way. It's like, you don't understand, like when you're dealing with public money, nothing moves efficiently because everything has to have a legal process. And when it doesn't, there's not one person that has the authority, like a CEO, to say, oh, we'll go ahead and change that. You have to wait for the whole process to move through. That's why it's so inefficient and so expensive for the government to do anything on any kind of efficient scale.
And then yet all we keep doing is trying to make the government even bigger. We're trying to make it even more.
We're not trying to do it. The government's making itself bigger.
Hey, people are voting.
And that's what I said.
It is on us. I'm not one to blame politicians because we're the ones that put them in-house. We're the ones that can take them out. But that being said, Biden talked about this PRO Act that he's looking to pass. So President Biden on Wednesday called for the passage of the PRO Act and for a $15 federal minimum wage during his first address in the session of Congress. The PRO Act is a sweeping pro-union bill passed the House in March. The legislation, which is the top priority for labor unions, remains stalled in the Senate. And Biden says this: the American Jobs Plan is a blue-collar blueprint to build America. That's what it says. So he probably just read it. He's like, I didn't write it. That's what it says. So it's going to do that. And it recognizes something I've always said. The guys and women on Wall Street didn't build this country. The middle class built this country. And the unions build the middle class. So,
oh my God.
Then he says, no one working 40 hours a week should live below poverty line. And that's his fight for the $15 minimum wage, right? So he says Biden on Monday signed an executive order creating a new White House task force focused on promoting labor unions.
What number is that? Like 135? Executive order this, executive order that.
The new task force will be directed to make recommendations within 180 days on how already existing federal policies and programs can be used to help workers organize and collectively bargain in the public and private sectors. So my whole thing is, and this is my interpretation of this article, right? So like I always said, I'm very biased towards businesses and investors and, just you being responsible for your life. Very biased towards that stuff. I'm reading this. He says how the unions build the middle class, right? So he's trying to bring on more unions. What is more unions? More politics, more policies, more inefficiencies.
Yeah.
Unions are by far one of the most inefficient thing because they gotta.
Well, the way they are run today too, it's like, and I mean, maybe they come up with a new way of doing. I don't know, but like when unions were first created, it's like it's back when like Ford was paying people like $3 a day and working 16 hours, or $3 an hour working 16 hours a day. It's like there was no representation and it was straight just like harvesting labor. It was like, so they collectively came together and they bargained. But like you hear these stories, these big unions coming together now, and it's handouts, bailouts, payouts, and everything like that. And or somebody put in the chat, it's like, is a quote, fixing government is an oxymoron concept because you say fix it by vote. It's like, I don't think you can, because when your votes are, it's like you get so many choices, but every single one of them they're incentivized to grow government to stay in power. Like you don't have the option to make government smaller. Like when is time come that like, it's like, oh, by voting, I'm going to make government smaller. We're going to fire all these departments. We're going to get rid of it. That didn't in fact make it bigger because it created a new thing to go through, created a new task force to go analyze all these old things to see which ones we can get rid of.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think it's ever going to.
When it's just that too, it's like, my thing is always, like I tell a lot of people when they're getting into real estate, when you're doing something new, you got to figure out what is it in your life that you're willing to sacrifice to bring in this new thing, right? Because you can't just keep piling on because you're not going to be able to do it. So my thing is like, you want to create a new task force. Okay. What task force are you getting rid of then? You can't tell me that every single task force created is efficient.
The people that are powers that make those decisions also are in power and get paid because they are politicians. So it's like, that's why like these empires rise and fall. As like they get too big for themselves,
Yep.
they get too complicated, get too messed up, too many inefficiencies, and somebody else comes up underneath and says like, look, their system's all screwed up. Ours is moving. It's just like the same thing is happening in Texas versus California. It's happening in the nations across the world and the powers that be. That's why China will eventually surpass the United States, because the United States was on top for too long, got too comfortable, and now we're arguing over these things versus what really matters around the world. And now you have a new world power coming up and taking market share away from somebody else.
Yeah,
It's
I was actually watching a video that Val sent to me on the homeless problem in Austin, and they're like, it's the same people there. They're like, yeah, it's ridiculous. One of the guy was saying, he's like, I'm all for the homeless having somewhere to be and all that, and I support that, and they have the right to choose, blah blah blah. He's like, but it gets a little tough sometimes being a liberal when I gotta keep shoveling human shit out of my lawn. And I was like, Jesus. And then there's a new proposition apparently in Austin to reinstate whatever they had before. I don't know what it is, but it's something related to the homelessness. He's like, you know, he's like, I'm going to vote against it just because it's the right thing to do, but I really hope more people vote for it. I was like, wait, what? Are you kidding me right now? Like you're saying how terrible this is, how much you hate it, how inconvenient it is, how you don't even walk down your own street with your daughter because you don't feel it's safe anymore because of how many homeless people are there. But when there's a way to kind of fix it, you're going to be like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that because it just seems wrong. So I'm going to vote to keep the status quo, but I really hope it doesn't pass.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on here? Like, you know what I mean? What is all these things that are going on? And it shows the inefficiencies, because even if that law was to pass, to one of the residents' points, it's like, this still doesn't solve anything. All you're doing is moving the homeless people from one area to another area. You know, but it's not solving anything. But there's nothing in place to say, hey, why don't we treat the cause of this problem instead of always trying to put a Band-Aid on every single problem that we see? You know, oh, there's a problem with homeless people over here. Okay, well, let's just move them over here now. Well, now this has a problem. Yeah, but we'll deal with that in the next election. And it's like, but all you're doing is just moving one thing from another area to another area.
The city budgets will pass homeless relocation assistance. They don't realize like, oh, it sounds relocating them to or homeless assistance and stuff like that. Housing assistance or something. And it's a fancy word, but when you look into it, it's like, no, it's money to buy bus tickets, one-way bus tickets to another city. And it's like, that's where some of these places, that's like Austin's exploded. It's like, oh, hey, we're no longer criminals and we can camp wherever we want. Let's move to Austin, Texas. So it's like, it's a beacon to bring people and homeless to those areas. That's why like a lot of California has such a homeless problem, is because like they have very liberal leaning laws towards the homelessness. So it's like, they're all going to move there. And like,
my thing is like that, those laws, like I understand what you're saying, you know, people, a human being has the right to, like they were saying, you know, to a shower, to electricity and stuff like that. I do disagree with that, right? I feel like you have a right to the things that I guess that you contribute to. You understand? Like if you're not contributing to shit, like what, just because you breathe, you have a right to all this? I don't understand that. To me, it's like you gotta earn your shit. Like this is not a hand me down kind of thing. Like I don't know. I don't get those things. If you're mentally ill or if you have some real serious issue, okay, there needs to be something for that. But when you have people that have openly chosen to be homeless just because they're like, I just don't feel like working. I like being out here. I like doing what I'm doing. You know, it's like, well, then let them do what they do. You know, just don't give them all this extra shit. Like Kim was saying how they passed a law that people could camp in public places and not get fined. Now they want to change that policy so you cannot camp in public places. So to me, it's like, why did that even pass in the first place? Like, why would you want to have people just be able to just go and camp anywhere they want? Like, what the hell is this?
Well, I guess it goes back to just what you said. Like, if they're choosing to be homeless, they don't want to work. They want like the place. Like, well, yeah, then they can camp in public places. Like it's public land. It's like you can go camp there, but not realizing the repercussions of that. That was going to be like, No, you just created a beacon for a bunch of homeless people to camp in public places and trash public places. You didn't
Yeah.
think that through. I mean, it's a great thing. It's like, in theory, it sounded like a good idea. It's like, hey, if somebody just wants to camp out in the park and just live there and be by themselves, go for it. They didn't realize the amount of people that were going to come together and create these entire communities and
I don't see how they didn't realize this. I mean, not for nothing, but Austin isn't the first place to have an influx of people. New York City has been dealing with this for quite some time, and you go to Central Park, nobody goes to Central Park at night, and especially certain areas of Central Park, you're definitely not going to go at nighttime.
Can you camp anywhere in Central Park?
Well, I don't know if they have like straight up tents, but you do have like large populations of homeless people in Central Park in different areas.
Oh, okay.
I've
never been there.
Yeah, I mean, have you not seen Home Alone 2? There's a lot of homeless people in Central Park.
Well, I thought
and that was back in the 90s.
I don't believe everything I see in the movies, John.
Oh, come on.
I don't know if
they
that
do
was
their
just like
research.
that was something just to.
But on a serious note, though, like, there's been cities and everything that's shown what works and what hasn't worked. Like, when are we just going to actually sit down and come up with real solutions instead of just coming up with little Band-Aids to just cause more and more problems? It's aggravating for me because every time I hear like, oh, we're going to create this policy. Like, and like, it's not doing absolutely anything. And yet you need millions of dollars of funding that's coming out of our pockets to fund that's going to nobody. The same with the renters and all that. Like $1.17 billion. And just this month, you've been able to distribute to 5,000 out of the 100,000 families that applied. Yeah. Are you kidding me? I mean, I don't know. It's aggravating for me.
It's like, that's why you can never, ever, ever run for any form of public office.
No. No. I always said if I ever ran, I had to be a dictator because I would be like, go in. And as soon as Congress forms, it's like, all right, you're all fired. Like, fire Congress, fire Senate, fire everybody, clean the government, bring it back to the people, and let the people put the right people in place.
But I mean, that's just how nations and history goes.
Yeah.
Like that.
We're in that kind of cycle.
Like, we the people did elect the people into the government that made the government this big over the last 250 years.
And they figured out like everything, right? Marketing. Like, everything is a business.
Yeah.
So they figured out marketing, they figured out branding, they figured out how it is that they need to market to get the next election taken care of, what they need to say, how they need to manipulate people so they can stay in power. And you can have somebody that's been not doing shit in government for decades. And it's like, you haven't done anything in decades. Like, why are you still here? But that's our political segment for the day.
I don't think we're going to be the two guys to fix government on a live show.
I have hope. I have hope. On going back to, do you have something that you wanted to talk before I was going to talk about the refinance?
No, go ahead. We'll shift away from.
All right. So going back to real estate, we have the FHFA. One day I'm going to say it without stuttering.
FHFA.
It releases new refi options for low-income borrowers. So the Federal Housing Finance Agency announced it is implementing a new refi product that targets low-income borrowers with single-family mortgages backed by Fannie and Freddie. According to regulatory agencies, this new product will assist borrowers who were less likely to take advantage of the 2020's historical low rates. Under the new refi option, lenders must ensure that the borrower saves at least $50 a month in their mortgage payments while simultaneously dropping their interest rate by at least 50 basis points. So, they went as far as giving an example of if the rate was 3.5, now it's 3%. So just in case you didn't know what 5 basis points was,
50 basis
50
points.
basis points, they showed you the math. The FHFA will also require the lenders provide a maximum of $500 credit for an appraisal if the borrower is not eligible for an appraisal waiver. And the GSEs, so the government-sponsored enterprises, Fannie and Freddie, will reimburse the lender once the loan is sold to them. As part of the Refi Now program, they will also waive its controversial adverse market refinance fee for borrowers with loan balances at or below 300 grand. The 50 basis point fee was originally implemented in December 2020, which we covered on this when they implemented it. Now they're saying that the new refi option would save borrowers an average of between $100 and $250 a month. Last year, we saw a spike in refinances, but more than 2 million low income families did not take advantage of the record low mortgage rates by refinancing. This new refinance option is designed to help eligible borrowers who have not already refinanced save between $1,200 and $3,000 a year on their mortgage payment. To qualify for this option, beyond owning a Fannie or Freddie loan mortgage, a borrower must have an income at or below 80% of the area's median income and have been current of their payments for the last 6 months. So in order to refinance, you had to have been current for, and have been current of their of all the payments. I thought it was one. And with no more than one payment missed in the last 12 months. So you had to have been current in the last 6 months and couldn't have missed more than one payment in the last 12 months. More borrowers must also not have a mortgage with a loan to value ratio greater than 97%, which I mean, not a crazy amount right now, especially with the way appreciation has been going, and a debt to income no higher than 65%. Lastly, borrowers must have a FICO score of 620 or higher, no lower than 620. So this is going to begin this summer. So you have the FHFA releasing this thing to help these people that fall under these requirements, right? 80% below the median income, and they have all these requirements so they can be able to refinance. What do you think is the purpose of this to help them to add this so they can refinance? What do you think is their target with helping lower income borrowers refinance? Do you think it's something to just make sure that you get another 30 years of mortgage taken care of? You know, that extends their mortgage?
It's just trying to be more inclusive. I mean, it comes back down to like this, like the refinances, the drop mortgage benefited the wealthy. Yes, it benefited the wealthy because it's also like they are intelligent. They're financially literate. They understand what those things mean. Most people, because we have a god-awful financial education system in this country.
We don't have one.
Yeah, like only like 19 states require some form of Finance 101 in high school, that it's not mandated that you do that. It's like that people get their house, they don't realize like mortgage rates drop, they don't know what that means. They have no idea the concept of what that is, how it works, or what it is. So it's trying to like incentivize more people. So if you think about it, it's a push-pull. All regulations a push-pull kind of ordeal. To where they're trying to pull people and incentivize mortgage brokers to try to get these loans out to people because they get paid on refinancing and processing these loans. It's like, so it does benefit the lower income people. Are like, hey, we're going to target these people that still have these high interest rates and try to educate them, saying like, look, if you refinance, you actually save yourself money. So it incentivizes mortgage brokers and banks to try to lend to the lower tier, less financially literate people to try to get them to refinance, because it will benefit them financially over time. I don't think it has anything to do with trying to get another 30 years of mortgages, because why would they? Because I'm pretty sure if you run the numbers, 27 years at 5% is a hell of a lot better than 30 years at 3%. So like, it's not, I don't think it has anything to do with that. It's trying to incentivize people like, hey, we need to get some of these mortgages out to be the more inclusive society that the current administration is trying to do and the people are trying to push. Because I mean, it's clearly like, if you look at the way people have voted and the way they've gone, the way the administration have taken the stance they have, it's like they're trying to we'll put it around quotes, do more for the middle class. And they're funding it, I think, is in that article, because I read that one too, that they're doing away with the 1031 exchange as part of funding for that too, of over $500,000. So they're trying to incentivize more money to get to the middle class, and I think that is what they're trying to do with that. Because I mean, it's lower class, they're not affording more, they're not getting houses. I doubt they have 620 credit scores for stuff like that. So I think that is what they're trying to do, is they're incentivizing the private sector to get more of these mortgages to the people that it would benefit the most from.
I guess I know I'm always the
skeptic,
the
pessimistic,
the darker side of the two. I look at it as this is a huge move on their part because they need more loans. I think their loan applications has dropped substantially because there's not that much inventory.
Need more loans. They're not getting new loans by this.
They're getting extensions.
No, they're not getting new loans. They're just refinancing loans. They already have the loans.
But a lot of those loans, don't they add more years to them?
Yeah, they add more years to them, but it's also like
but they're low for longer term.
But they're lowering their interest rates, so they're making less money.
Yeah, but it's over a long time. All their projections and everything is over decades. It's not over right now.
Nobody holds their homes for 30 years. Like your average is only like 3
It doesn't matter,
years.
But it still shows on the books how many loans they have, and for how long of the time.
It increases the length of time.
Exactly.
But it doesn't increase the number of loans.
But it increases the length of time. So they're not expiring, let's say, in the next 20 years. Now they're expiring the next 30 years. So they get an extra 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's just more revenue that they're going to be able to predictably have for an extra 10 years, depending on the loan. And now you're not only doing that, but you're also providing more capital to people now that are in the lower incomes that tend to get more. They don't pull money out.
No, these aren't cash out refis. These are just refinances. Cash out changes the whole dynamic of a mortgage. That's not a refi anymore.
They said specifically this isn't cash out?
Because they said like if you're lowering your interest rates, that's the only way those work. If you try to refinance and you want cash out, that changes the whole dynamic. Your interest rates go up.
No, I know it changes everything, but they're not including cash out?
I mean, they didn't say that, but I highly doubt that they're saying you're getting cash out refinances.
I don't know. I would like to see like for them to actually say what would that entail. Because if it doesn't include cash out refis, then it's like, well, if they're not cashing out, then they're not really getting any more money that they could be pumping back into the market by having more money. Like usually people, when they refinance their house, they go shopping, take vacations and shit like that. So if they're not pulling that money out and all it purely is just a drop on interest rate and drop of monthly payments, then it's just encouraging more home ownership. I mean, I think that ends up hurting more of the market as far as inventory goes, because now you're refinancing these lower income people that before couldn't refinance, which were more likely the ones that were probably going to end up selling their homes, to now saying, well, why the hell would I when I just drop my mortgage payment an extra $100, $250 a month or more?
I think that article, it stated like that a lot of people were going to save like several $100s a month in their payments. A lot of times, like when they bought these houses through FHA, they have mortgage insurance. But if they bought their house anytime like more than 5 years ago, like they have 20% equity now. That like I think when my parents like refinanced their house, like their payment dropped like $300 and $350 a month because like they put 10% down on their house when they bought it.
Just removing the PMI,
it was like $150, $180 right there.
Yeah.
So like they got huge amounts because like, just the way the article is written, saying like these people are going to be saving all this money by doing refinances. They weren't tailoring it towards cash out refinances. Like you don't save money in your mortgage payment by doing cash out refi. So that's where I was thinking like the way the article is written, I doubt it includes being able to do a cash out refinance for this program. The way they wrote the article. I mean, there could be a clause in there that said they didn't specifically state it, but between the lines, I read that it's
Brian. If you're listening and you want to do a little research on that one, he had volunteered before that. He says he's down to do research. So just figure out if this includes cash out refis and how that's going to affect their interest rate. But regardless of that, okay, so then it is a good thing what they're doing. They're really helping out lower income and everything. And so now what does that mean for real estate investors is that more and more people refinance, that's less inventory that's going to be hitting the market because nobody's going to want to sell their home now when their mortgage payment just dropped hundreds of dollars and they have an all-time low interest rate on a house that's like, why am I going to sell?
Yeah, because then you look at like, and because I know that's a problem now. It's like, I want to sell my house, but where do I go? I hear the horror stories of these people doing it, and it's like, I sell my house, but then I got to go buy a house. And it's like, I'd rather just remodel what I have or get a home equity line of credit or do a cash out refinance because you can still, interest rates are higher, but you still get money out at a very low interest rate, and I'm going to remodel the house versus upgrade to a newer one. I'm going to do an addition versus
Well, this is why I said before, and I said this, I don't know how many weeks ago, but I was like, this is the perfect time to be a contractor. Because right now, if you're a contractor, I'll be doing what is called guerrilla marketing. This is something that I learned about, I don't know, about 10 years ago. And I had showed it, my brother-in-law, Dre, he had learned about it at the time too. And his mom started implementing it by putting flyers on everybody's door in the neighborhoods that she had a cleaning company. She would put flyers on everybody's door about her services, and she was killing it at the time. You know, she was getting calls all the time. She was getting good business. That's what I would do. I mean, if I was a contractor right now, I would be doing guerrilla marketing.
Oh, dude,
I'll be doing flyers. I'll be going to the neighborhoods I want to renovate houses in, you know, and putting out flyers on all the doors. Because the seller that we just dealt with now, she has a home in a neighborhood that I'm pretty sure that home is worth probably like 300 grand, maybe a little bit more. And she wants to update her house. And I walked through it with her. She showed me what she wants to do. She wants to blow out the kitchen. She wants to do all this. She doesn't know who to call. You know, she's going to obviously call us to see who we can recommend to do the job. But I was like, man, if I was a contractor right now, this neighborhood,
dude,
it was the amount of people walking really, really slow on those sidewalks is astonishing. And I'm sure they probably want to update their homes.
Dude, it was crazy. Like I was at HEB the other day and I saw this truck drive by.
You were where?
At HEB.
Oh, HEB.
And I saw it, I was like, my God, that's a nice truck. And the whole thing was wrapped. And I'm looking at it, it was a roofing company. Dude, it was a 1-ton brand new F1 or F250 or no F350 because it was a dually, had just nice mud tires on it, like these chrome rims with like this like powder coating on. Like it was a decked out truck. It's like that's probably $150,000 truck, and they're just a roofing company. It's like they got their marketing on point because they went there. I mean, we know how lucrative the insurance is for roofs. Of what we can get a roof done to what the insurance is willing to pay. I mean, it's almost double the cost. To where like they got their marketing down, like they know how to do this stuff, like they got it, and like the fact that that contractor's driving that style nice a vehicle, and like if you're contracting and you can actually manage your financing right, heaven forbid a contractor knows how to do
truck
that.
pulls up to one of our projects to give us a bid, I'd be like,
nope. Like I'm like,
I am not paying for your truck.
I am making your truck payments for something like that.
No.
I want the guy that's driving a 30-year-old pickup. It's like, but it was just crazy. But like to your point, like a contractor today, like if they are good and know how to market and control their finances, I think they could do very, very, very well because those trades are in such short supply.
Now, another point here. So you're another opportunity. If you're somebody that understands construction, maybe you are not a contractor yourself anymore, or you're not longer in construction, but you understand construction and you are not making any money. This is the point where if I was you, I would do the same thing. I would do guerrilla style marketing. I would go to these higher end neighborhoods. In San Antonio, I'll probably target neighborhoods where the houses sell for $300 and up. And I will go put flyers on all this. Then I will go give them estimates on what it is. And then I will hire the subcontractors and I will make a small little spread in between there. You have multiple projects going. You can probably make a good 10 grand a month doing this shit, just managing a couple jobs, you know, and for somebody that's hurting, you know, but that's an opportunity. Now,
I was like, the dangers of that on my head's just spinning like,
100%.
But you got to know the people that can hire the job to do a good job, that they don't fall back on your license because it's your license they're working under.
Well, and you got to understand that. I mean, I'm hoping that if you're doing this, you're not a dumbass that's doing it and, you know, that you have no idea what it is that you're doing. I hope you have some understanding on what it is that you're doing. So you're doing a good job. You're still providing a good service. You know, I think either one of us would be more than qualified to do something like that if we had the time to do it. Right. And we would probably provide a hell of a freaking service right now. And with the shortage of people and the shortage of all this for homeowners, it's very hard for them to find somebody. You understand? So the best bet is like, oh, let me just go on Google and see who I find. Where now they have a flyer of you on their door. You go to these elderly homes, you know, these people that are like 60s and over that are probably not on Google.
Well, then
and
it's
Facebook.
also one of the things nowadays where like I think that style of marketing could actually almost be more effective than going on Google and stuff like that, because like you hear all the time of like the fake reviews, the bad reviews, like so you can create an online persona that is nothing more than a scam, where it's like, well, this person's doing what isn't the norm now, because like back like 10, 20 years ago, Google was a great place to be marketing because you were new to the space. But now so many people on it, I think they've kind of capitalized on how to fake being on there, and you hear enough of the scams that come from that stuff that I think you could go the opposite direction.
The thing is, like,
the opposite way.
Google is trying to modify their algorithm yet again because it's gotten very easy for shit companies to hit the first page of Google. Because they figured out how to hack the algorithm, they pay more, whatever it is, and they get on the first page of Google. I mean, we know how many shitty wholesalers have a website on the first page of Google, and we know they're a complete dog shit, right?
Well, they're not wholesalers. They present themselves as home buying investors and stuff like that. Like they're the investor, they're the buyer. It's like, no, you ain't the buyer. Like you're buying it, but all of a sudden you buy it and then sell it 2 days later for a higher price for.
If that, most of the time you're just wholesaling the contract.
Yeah.
But I see them that they're on the first page of Google and everything because they know how to play the algorithm, how to pay, and how to get there first. And Google's realized that too, where they're realizing it's like, all right, we're starting to get garbage on the first page. So they're trying to change their algorithms where it's not even if you can pay more. Like it needs to be relevant. It needs to matter. It needs to be, that people not only went through, but like it was a good experience. Like they're really focused on making sure that the people that are on the first page deserve to be on the first page, right? So all that being said, it's like guerrilla marketing is where it's at right now for certain spaces.
Yeah.
Not all, but for certain spaces, especially for contractors. That's what I would be doing. Don't put it in the mailbox because that's illegal. You will get in trouble, trust me. But that being said, like putting it on their door or wherever, like I think it's a hell of a marketing tactic. And if you're hurting or if you're trying to look for something, it's a great opportunity. So I would definitely be checking that out. What do you want to hit next? We have quite a bit of topics still on the docket.
I mean, I'll go back to. Well, I'm just reading through the. Oh, here's one. Like the summer should be fun. Look forward to high gas prices and low gas inventory. Something to me was like, oh, gas prices are going to go up again. I thought it was something political, something crazy, and it actually has nothing to do with that. As millions of Americans hope for summer vacation, another pandemic-related agitation has cropped up. In a twist, though, it's not an actual shortage of fuel. It's a shortage of truck drivers able to deliver the fuel to its targets, the gas stations. According to the National Tank Truck Carriers, 20 to 25% of tank trucks in the fleets are parked. That's quite an increase over 2019 when only about 10% were sitting idle for that same reason. The pandemic caused many drivers to walk away from the industry with lockdowns and closures of businesses, including tanker truck driving schools. I've talked to retailers. They say they could be places where there are brief outages. He said if they have no fuel, they have no business. People aren't going to stop in for a sandwich if you don't have fuel. Jeff Leonard, spokesman for the National Association of Convenience Stores. The national average of a gallon of regular gas is way up predictably from 2020, standing at $2.89, and industry expects to have said $3 per gallon this summer would not be surprising. That's just something that's like there's a shortage of truck drivers. And it's like, and now they're going to have to incentivize people to pay more to get more truck drivers to increase the price of fuel. I mean, I look at a lot of this stuff like, what an excuse to cause inflation. Because you want to talk about push-pull, it's like you have a huge pull like lumber prices right now. You have this demand of construction, you have this demand for fuel, you have this demand for energy, but you shut all the schools down to trade those people, or you give the unemployment insurance to keep those things shut down, and the only way those people can compete is they have to raise their prices. And once those new prices get set in across the industry, they start borrowing debt on those new prices and those new things, those prices don't go back down over time. So like you look at overall inflation, like this is a great way, like fuel prices are up, energy prices, lumber prices, food prices, because they're having to hire and pay more to entry level positions.
So why aren't truck drivers driving though? Why can't they hire more truck drivers?
Because they don't have the school. The school shut down. And it's
So-
literally because last year the school shut down, so they weren't training new people to enter the industry, and a lot of people left the industry because businesses were closed, gas stations were closed.
And why
so
aren't those people coming back?
they left the industry because like that's where I say
They shifted industries.
Yeah, leisure and hospitality has a huge problem right now.
Mm-hmm.
Labor shortage. Like, yeah, why would you go back to an industry that just decimated your lifestyle? Like,
Yeah.
it's like saying, "Oh, that plate's hot. I'm gonna go touch it again." And it's like, no, you just learned your lesson. Like that hurt. I'm gonna go find something else to do.
Well, we know some pilot friends that did it.
But
yeah, I mean,
that's why I think they're leaving. It's like,
you know what's funny is that there was a post this week on a Facebook group with contractors, and somebody said, "Does anybody know when lumber prices are going to come down this year, or are they even going to come down this year at all?" So I went ahead and, there were a couple of responses. Oh, hell no. Oh, this is crazy. Blah, blah, blah. And I just put my 2 cents.
typical trolls.
Yeah. No, not trolls. Everybody was putting in their 2 cents, and I put in my 2 cents. I was like, well, you want to know when it's going to prices are going to come down. It's not like there aren't any trees left. I was like, there's plenty of trees. The availability of lumber isn't the issue. What's been the issue is a cut in the supply chains has slowed a lot of things down. The shutdowns have caused a lot of mills to shut down and lay off people. Those laid off people had to go get other jobs. Now those mills are trying to open back up. They don't have people working because at the prices they used to pay, people are collecting more on unemployment, because that's very, very entry-level jobs. So you're having all these things play into effect where it's like, when do you want prices to come down? No time soon. Like I don't see all these things need to play out. Unemployment needs to stop. You need to create kind of that incentive for people wanting to go get a job again. And once that happens, supply chains pick up. I mean, we just had that ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal for like a week, right? And it hurt. What do you need a password for? And it hurt.
My internet just like crapped out on everything. I was just make sure the internet was still working.
Oh, and oh shit, here too.
That's what I was saying. Like the internet just
Dre,
glitched out.
is it still connected? Okay.
I was like,
Maybe
yeah,
it's just
everything
Wi-Fi.
shut down. Yeah, it's like, what happened?
So the live stream is still saying good connection. All right.
Okay.
So I was like, so you got to look at that ship being there. I was like, it has stalled. Like, I don't know how many millions of dollars.
Like 400 million an hour or something.
An
crazy
hour.
stat.
Yeah. It was like, I think like
nuts.
40 or 60 billion for that week that it cost. And now all the delays that's trickled in, and they have. I also read another one where they have tankers in some port in California that've been waiting in line for like 7 days to be unloaded. Like they're like, well, we used to just dock and unload. We've been waiting for 7 days.
Well, it just goes to show like how sensitive and fragile our economic supply chain systems can be, to where like one thing happens and the trickle effect of that just like permeates through the entire economy. And like the whole pandemic, like the shutting things down and doing what they did is just like, because now you have I have several articles on here about the economy ready to go, but it's like, but now it takes time. Like, yeah, you can turn it off like real quick and shut everything down, but like trying to start those things back up, because when you do that, like with the tankers, it's like once their lives were decimated, it's like I moved, I left, I went somewhere else, I had to get retrained, I had to find jobs somewhere else, to where it's like, yeah, now I have to disrupt my life again to go back to that, recertify, get retooled. That's one thing like the airlines, when they talked about talking with our friends, it was like, you lay off pilots, the cost to get those pilots retrained and recertified to meet today's regulations, like be able to fly again, is astronomical, to where like the economy is going to take even longer to come back if we don't have the pilots ready to go.
Yeah.
And because like the retooling, the retraining of those people, and costs will go even higher.
So what was actually funny though is that's what I posted, exactly what I just said. Somehow people didn't like what I posted.
Shocking. Somebody didn't like what you had to say.
But I didn't feel like I was like controversial or anything. I was like, to me, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you're so full of shit. You're definitely a Trumpster. And I'm like, the hell? I was like, what are you talking about?
That's everyone's like rebuttal to like,
Yeah.
here's what common sense and how economics work. You're a Trumpster.
I was like, but
What?
this isn't even pro or against Biden or Trump. Like, yeah, nothing. I'm just saying what's happening, And so I was like, whatever. I'll look at these comments later. And within about an hour or so, the post got taken down. I was like, wow.
Where was this post on?
It was on a Facebook group for like contractors and builders or something.
Oh my God.
I was shocked. I was like, what just happened? Like, we were just I thought we were having a conversation. We were talking about supply lines and like lumber prices. Like, what the hell just happened here? Why did this shit get removed? So they took down the whole post. And I was just shocked by like people's reaction of how pissed off they were. And I was like, but this isn't an opinion. Like, I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm just saying like this article states, they can't find freaking truck drivers. If you can't find truck drivers, look at how everything connects, right? You can't find truck drivers to deliver the gas. Now you don't have gas to work the other trucks that need to deliver the materials. Now you don't have the materials to build the houses. You don't have the gas to move the trucks. You don't have, like, everything connects, And if you don't have the workers to move, like, this is the stuff that I was saying. I was like, this isn't an opinion, guys. Like, this is just what's happening. And yeah, so the post got taken down. And then it hit me like when I saw just the comment that Biden made about saying, it is sad that, and I don't know if we get into it, but like he says, it's sad that we have such large population living below the poverty line, right? We need to increase minimum wage to $15. Now, I did see so far the proposal, and it's like, it's not $15 from day one. It's going to incrementally go to $15 by, I think, 2025 is the target.
Yeah.
I was like, this is to me, and I could be 100% wrong. So if I am, please feel free to correct me. You raise the minimum wage to $15. You're just essentially raising the barrier of poverty higher. Like, because the level of poverty that what constitutes as poverty now wasn't the same level that was, let's say, 2 decades ago or whatever it was, right? It was lower before. And as money increases and all that, that level gets bumped up. If you increase the minimum, those people are still going to be in poverty. Everything else increases.
It'll raise people out of poverty for a short period of time.
Very, very short period of time.
I don't think it's I'd probably say a decade or more. That it's like by the time economy,
Why?
So they raise the minimum wage, you're forced to pay. Like, you're going to decimate middle America. You're going to move people to urban areas. And now there's a new standard of living. And like, so it's a quick shift of 5 years, say like, or not even 5 years, 3 years. Like, it's going to take a place like McDonald's, like those massive companies they're political in nature, that they can't move very quick as like a small business can. It will take them a while to implement all of those costs. It'll hit them hard first, and then over time they're slowly going to start automating. They're going to start optimizing and start creating efficiencies and stuff like that will start to slowly raise the poverty line, where you're going to start laying off more people, be more automatic, be more everything, to where I think over the course, I'd say like 10 years, eventually the $15 an hour is the new standard for. And then they're saying, well, now it's $15 an hour. We need to raise it to $18 an hour. We need to raise it to $20 an hour to constantly try to keep people ahead of it, because the economy is going to constantly try to find that new poverty. Like, you can try to fix them by giving them more money, but that's not the solution. As like, you give them more money and eventually the economy will optimize and become efficient and raise the level of poverty. Because I mean, the last raise from whatever it was to 725, like I remember I was in high school when that happened. I was like a freshman in high school, like 14, 15 years old. I mean, that's 15 years ago. And like, so why didn't they raise it to $15 an hour then? Because they were trying to get people out of the poverty line. Now, 15 years later, they're saying we need to raise the minimum wage again. So that's what I was saying. Like, obviously the level of poverty has risen to that over the course of the last 15 years. I think it'll speed up now. So now they're going to $15 an hour, and the economy is going to do what it always does.
You look at technology, you look at everything. Businesses are able to adapt a lot quicker.
Yeah,
they're able to automate a lot faster than before. And I mean, we saw this like even just in Home Depot. I remember we were going to Home Depot buying materials, and then all of a sudden it felt like overnight, it's like, where's the staff? Like, it became nearly impossible to find somebody that works there to ask them, like, hey, where's this thing? And then they came out with the app. Now Home Depot and Lowe's, they all have the apps where you're saying, hey, where's this thing? Well, they have free Wi-Fi. They have the app. You go on the app, you search, it tells you exactly what aisle, what section, where's this one thing. So they're able to have a lot less people working there to service people.
See, that's where I think like the big corporations will optimize, laying those people off, deleting workforce. Those workforces will then trickle down to from your Fortune 500s to your Fortune 1000s that move a little slower, then to your bottom tier markets, and then it'll move into the mom and pops, and it'll slowly wiggle its way down to where they can't optimize, but they can still afford to pay the $15 an hour. And eventually you will get overwhelmed with people that can't be employed at those big companies because there aren't any jobs there, and it'll overwhelm the bottom sector. And that's when the poverty line rate starts rising up with it, because
then even the bottom sector is going to start raising their prices because they're going to have to.
That's what I said. Like, who's raising minimum wage hurt? The people you're raising the minimum wage for.
Yeah.
Like over the long term, they'll be like the short period, they'll get a little juice, and then it'll go right back to the way it is, because money doesn't fix the problem.
It's aggravating because I was listening to all this, and it's just that whole conversation of income inequality, right? And it's that little buzzword that a lot of politicians like hitch their wagon to. And it's just like, I actually wanted to look into it, and I found that they were saying poverty has gone down from 15% down to 11%. And I believe it was like a decade or so.
I was going to say, what, last year?
Yeah, so poverty has gone down. Now, what constitutes as poverty, right? Because even we've always talked about this. When we got started in real estate, even when I got here 8 years ago, I was doing a lot of foreclosure marketing because it was still very big in San Antonio. And I remember going to like the east side, the far south side, houses that were worth like 20 grand. But they all had like a new car, big screen TV, running water, electricity. The house it was old as shit. Things were falling apart. I agree. But they all had cell phones. It was like, what is poverty now?
Yeah.
So, because, and I'm not saying those people shouldn't be living any better. By all means, of course, everybody should. But let's also not just use the word poverty as like, oh my God, they're starving, because they're not.
Yeah.
They're not starving. They have running water. They have electricity. They have access to jobs, whether they want to do them or not. They have access. They may not be the best jobs like we talked about before. Like right now, there are plenty of jobs. They may not be the jobs you want to do, but there are jobs available. There's a lot of jobs available. So you look at all this, and the point of the article was that they were talking about how how large the gap is from the uber wealthy, your Elon Musk, Bezos, to the poverty. And they're like, it's outstanding. It's ridiculous. It's this, it's that. And it's like, wait, so are we starting to punish people because they became wealthy?
Yes.
Like, you're saying it's bad for Jeff Bezos to be wealthy, the founder of Amazon. Who the freak doesn't use Amazon right now, right? Amazon services, I'm going to say hundreds of millions just to not say billions, because Amazon is worldwide. So Amazon services millions and millions of people daily, consistently, on every aspect that you can think of. They provide a service that most of us have become like relying on. At this point, it's like, I need something, I always order it from Amazon versus even going to the store anymore, because it's like, yeah, I'll wait a day. I don't need to go online and get the shit and all that. I just get it shipped to my house. Exactly what I need. Sometimes even better prices. So for creating this amazing company, we're saying that he's an asshole. We're trying to punish him. Like, he's not a billionaire because he's stealing money. He's a billionaire because he provided a service that caters to millions of people.
This is throughout history, decade after decade, administration after administration, politician after politician, billionaires from back in the day. It's like they've always been the target for politicians, like, because they make good punching bags and to get votes, because that's how you target somebody that idolizes, like somebody towards the bottom, which is way more less wealthy people than are wealthy people, and you say, we're going to use them as a political punching bag. And the person that's feeling the pain saying like, yeah, and they think that money's going to solve their problems, like, yeah, they should be taxed more so you can give me more money, so I'm going to vote for you. So like, that's all they are. It's a political punching bag. And like, I don't think they're going to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Like, because it's like, you are getting paid probably through a roundabout way, you could trace the money where that's coming from. It's going from the wealth that's being created by those publications or by those companies, because they have to have money to put that message out to reach the people you're trying to get to vote for them.
And
so,
it's just aggravating because, you know, you look at the media and they keep talking about like just that difference, right, between Jeff Bezos and your person that's making, I don't know, 20 grand and like bumfuck Louisiana or whoever the hell it is, right, that they're making like below poverty or whatever it is. Look at that gap. It's like, yeah, but I'm sure that person still has a TV, a cell phone, you know.
They eat every day.
Yeah, they have food. They
probably overweight. It's like, shows like you're eating more calories than what your body needs.
Exactly. They're fine, right? Like, yes, they're not living like optimal. They're not living the middle class, but there's a reason why there's lower income. Why don't they call it low class? I know it sounds wrong, but it's if you have middle class and upper class, you know, like, shouldn't that be the lower class?
You have lower, middle, and upper.
Just sounds, it sounds offensive. It sounds like somebody's feelings just got hurt right now.
Well, anyways, I mean, get away from this topic.
No, I don't want to get away from it because I think it's a very important topic to hit, because one of the things that pisses me off the most is that they keep using minorities as an excuse. Oh, but look at the minorities. Look at the minorities. I was an immigrant in this country, like a legit immigrant, no papers. I couldn't drive legally, even though I still drove. I couldn't get a job, not even at McDonald's, because I didn't have a social security number to apply for a job. You understand? Like, I grew up that way for the majority of my life. I was here since I was 6 into my early 20s. I lived that way. Yet my dad came to this country with no English in his 30s, and within 10 years built a company that was generating him like 30 grand a month, a construction company. He had brand new vehicles. He bought himself a house because he had no papers. He was paying like 12% interest on the mortgage, but he did that with no English still. Like, he still doesn't speak any freaking English.
Yeah.
You understand? And he had no papers at all, and he did all that. And he talk about a minority. It's like the guy didn't even speak the damn language, didn't have a social security number, yet he did that. Yet I know when I met more of these people when I joined Clubhouse, but I've seen the amount of minorities on Clubhouse that are crushing it in real estate investing, in stocks, in this and that, in a million different things. So stop using minorities as a freaking excuse. We are not retarded. We're not incapable.
Well, that's what I said.
Like, using that as an excuse pisses me the hell off.
Well, I think the majority of minorities do feel that way, but they also don't have a voice. So I think it's the political pundits in the news using minorities, because it's the opposite of it's opposite of the majority. It's like they get the majority's vote because they're trying to help the minorities.
But it's the news that's keeping them down, because it's telling them, oh, the reason you're this way is because you're a minority. So it's like, okay, so I guess I got to be this way. It's like, no, you don't. There is no reason why you're this way. Get out there and bust your ass. Yes, you do have to bust your ass. I'm sorry. You have to work. But guess what? If you work, you do get it. I know all colors, races, and everything that have gotten it time and time again because they went out and they freaking worked. They didn't make excuses for why they couldn't do certain things. You understand? So when they use this income inequality and they use all these policies and all this shit and doing all this, I'm like, all you're doing is hurting them even more because you're giving them shit. You're not fixing the problem. The problem is education. The problem is that you keep marginalizing them. You keep saying that they are not amounting to shit because they are a minority. Yeah. You know, you're making it racist. You're making it even more racist. And now you're coming out with more policies to make it unracist, which makes it even more racist.
Yeah.
Because now you're purposely isolating them and purposely doing all these things just for them. Why not treat them equally? Period. Yeah. That's how you get rid of racism. You treat people equally.
But it never will. Like the goal isn't to eliminate racism. It's just to create a shift the narrative to get votes, get power, get money. That's what it all is. Like, you get so frustrated about it. It's like, you just have to accept that's the way it is. It always will be, always has been.
Feel like my head is going to explode.
And it's never going to change. It's like, I don't think their goal is to do that. Like, their intention is like, well, I'll be good. It's like, but it's still, they're self-centered. Like, they are out for themselves first. Yeah. And I mean, you just look at it, it's like, you take care of yourself first and then everybody else last. So I mean, the only person that might be different, like, is like I heard that of the Bet David interview when he was like that he knows like I'm gonna name a person. You give me one word that reminds you or comes to mind when you say this person's name, and he said the Bernie Sanders, and he's like consistent, and he's like I would agree. Over the course of his political career, he has been consistent with his message of like what he is wanting. Call it whatever it may be. He's like, but it is very consistent. He's always been after the big people. He's always been after the rich people, even though he is now himself rich and owns 3 houses. It's just like, but he's consistent with his narrative through his political career.
What does that matter?
I'm just saying, like, it's like most people flip flop, but he has been consistent towards it.
So you want to vote for Bernie?
No.
What are you saying?
No, I'm not. Never mind. I'm saying like politicians usually flip flop to wherever their narrative is going, where the hockey puck's at.
Right.
But like you have some very few that stay consistent, and on him being one of them, whether you agree with him or not. And I'm not saying I do agree with him at all. It's like, but he has been consistent with his message that he has had over his career. But it's never going to change. It's just what the current topic is now. And like we're young in our careers, and I bet we'll still be having these conversations in 30-40 years because it's not going to change. It's just going to look different. Just like I said, it's going to rhyme. It's just going to be from a different angle this time, because it used to be I heard people saying like in the 40s, or not the 40s, but like 60s and 70s, it was about the lower class. It was about the lower class. It was about the lower class. Well, once the lower class was decimated, now it's about, the middle class. Oh, the middle class. Oh, the middle class.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's been decimated. And it's like, and now it's like, what's it going to be next? Oh, the upper class. The upper class. So like it just like, it shifts. And like that gap between rich and poor just continues to get wider and wider and wider until enough people below don't believe the bullshit being fed to them. And they vote and get different people
just what you're saying. I think what is needed is a rebranding. Stop classifying it as low class, middle class, upper class, because you're pretty much, you're labeling people like you're bad, okay, and good, right? Like you're labeling people where it's like the people in the low class, it doesn't mean that they're miserable. There's a lot of people there in that class that make a certain amount of money that they're perfectly happy the way they live. They're fine. They don't need to be living in an upscale neighborhood. They don't care if they're driving the brand new car. They don't care if their house has all the newest cabinets. They don't care. They're happy with where they are. So why are they considered low class? You understand? Like, that's just who they are. So if we rebrand, I think this whole problem of poverty and all this shit where it's like, look, if people have a roof over their head, running water, electricity, and food, like you shouldn't be considered poverty anymore. Like you have your basic necessities. You're living. You're alive. You're literally net zero at that point. Anything above that is a plus. You know what I mean? Like you have your basic necessities. So it's like, why don't we just look at these things for what they are and stop making people feel bad like they need to keep up with the Joneses?
Well, they have to.
Yeah,
that's well, it's not for votes. No, it's capitalism too. It's like capitalism tries to get people, like they want people to feel getting up with the Joneses. That's a consumer mentality of the entire country. It's like you have to have these labels the way our economic system works, the way the whole entire country was built.
I don't know if you have to.
I mean, how would you not? Like if you don't have people feeling getting up for the keeping up with the Joneses and putting all these Facebook ads and the influencers and all the money involved,
you're always gonna have the people that want more, but you shouldn't have to make the people that don't want more feel bad for not wanting more.
Why would you not try to do it? You're a marketer. Why would you not try to convince?
Not as a marketer. I'm saying as a politician.
It's like it's all one thing at that point.
Well, because let's talk about morals. It's morally wrong for you to make somebody feel bad for not having what the middle class has when they're perfectly happy having what they have.
But that's what businesses have been doing for
not
generations.
Businesses. I'm saying politicians.
I know, but it's like at this point, like you're classifying. I mean, in my mind, they're the exact same thing.
But they're not though, because a business is not the same as a politician. A politician supposedly is in government for the people. So why are you attacking the people?
I mean, you're not attacking the people.
Well, you're making them feel like they're less than.
But they're not making them feel like that.
How are they not?
The news.
They're classifying them. If you make this amount of money, you live in these areas, you're a minority.
No, it's like politicians follow what the narrative is and like what gets people's eyeballs.
But they shouldn't. They should be following what is right.
Yeah, but that's not what gets votes.
I understand. That's where I'm going at.
But that's where it's not. The politicians follow what.
But they're creating a fear.
The politicians aren't. I think the businesses are creating the fear. The keeping up with the Joneses create those hot buttons to realize like, hey, these people are like, how do I get more of this? How do I get more of that? So if I create my narrative to get my votes tailored towards where the people are searching, following where the businesses are being marketed to, that's where I need to get my narrative, and that's where I go. It's like I think that politicians is not a push, it's a pull. They're being pulled towards where the eyeballs are going, where the data is going. The Google searches, like when is housing prices going down? Why is the housing so expensive? It's like, well, we need to do stuff for housing because so many people are searching for this. As like it's a self-fulfilling circle at that point. As like they're tailoring towards making you feel bad. It's like, no, they feel bad because they're trying to keep up with the Joneses. They're trying to see all that marketing of saying new car, new car, new car, new car, all those billboards saying low interest rates, we'll finance things for 0% financing. Oh, my neighbor got a new car because he got the advertisement from the business down the street. I want a new car. I can't afford a new car. They type it into Google. Google gives the analytics to the politicians. Politicians see enough people going after those money, and now they tailor their message towards targeting those people because that's where the majority of people are.
So you think what, businesses need more regulation, or this is just
I just think I think this is how it is. It's like it's the way our system is built. Like that is how it happens. It's the ebb and the flows to where you hear a lot more, and you see it with the administration now. They are doing things that are disincentivizing wealthy people. Like eliminating the 1031, raising taxes on the wealthy, because that's what the administration ran on. Because enough people have felt like they have been left out by the economy to vote those kind of people into policies. And we'll see what's going to come around the next election, to where if people are saying like, I don't agree with this, they'll vote a new rounder in. That's where it's like saying like the reason Biden is in the administration is because of Trump. Trump won because of Obama. Obama won because of Bush. To where it's like it ebbs and flows and it constantly goes around and around and around until like the whole system eventually collapses, like you see throughout history.
That's what's sad. Like I'm trying to think about ways that we can get ahead of it not breaking, but it's like in order for it to change, it needs to break.
Well, it's just like recessions. Like all good things, like it's healthy for an economy, it's healthy for a world, it's healthy for civilization to have what the status was to eventually break, to eliminate the efficiencies, because that's the only way you get rid of it, is it completely breaks down and a new system rises up. But that breaking point, that recession, as you look at it, is very, very rough, and there is a lot of discourse. But in those inefficiencies, the new efficiency will be created, people will gravitate towards it, prosperity will be created, and it'll rise up with that, and that'll be the new power that comes underneath. Yeah. Or like China has risen because obviously they have a potentially better system.
They're just communists. They don't allow democracy, so they're all under one plan. They've been executing. But it's been decades.
Working, obviously. Because look at the size of their economy.
Well, it's anything. If you keep one consistent plan, eventually it's gonna work. Where the U.S. changes plans every time a new president goes up. You know, so it's like you can never build anything on this. Every time that you're starting to build something, you
and it's like, and now we're starting to realize late stage democracy, like you have these problems. Yeah, and it's like I believe in democracy, not communism, but it's also like the way the hybrid that they're running over in China has allowed them to create so much wealth from when they started modernizing their economy. Yeah, and like so you can't say that it doesn't work because it's worked for them. Which one's better? I mean, the battle of the two titans is gonna come to head.
Oh, I mean, it does. Saying it doesn't work, it's like, well, stealing works to make you more money. It still doesn't make it right. Yeah, you understand? So it's like, yeah, it may work, but it doesn't mean that it's the right way to do it.
But it's the right way to do it if it's not illegal in that place.
Yeah.
I was like, the way their system works is like, obviously it's been working because they're gaining on the United States.
It can't be illegal when they're the ones creating the law.
Exactly. So it's like, yeah, they may be stealing by our rules, and that's our belief system. But their belief system is that it's right, and it's showing that, like, economically, when you look at it that way, it's right by those standards. Even though we disagree because it's not our belief system, but in their belief system, that is okay. So that's where I'm saying it's a self-revolving circle. Like how to fix it, like the politicians and stuff. Like you need to have massive disruption that break the whole system down to where it literally just like crumbles and those old things go away and new things rise. I mean, it's just kind of like the forest fire that it burns the whole forest, but it's actually good. People try to stop it. It's like, because so new growth can come up. Right. It's like those things have to happen in every cycle of the entire world.
The problem that always happens with forest fires is they can't be controlled.
Yeah.
And there's always collateral damage.
And that's what,
so that's what's kind of scary and sad at the same time, is that to think that for this forest fire to happen and the new shit to grow. Like
massive destruction and pain has to happen. It's like, but it's one of the things like why you need to tune into Coffee with the Johns and hit that like button because we stay on top of those things.
Wow. What a pitch. So on that note, it is top of the hour, so we're going to begin wrapping up. So like I said before, if you want insider tips or if you live in San Antonio and you want to join our property tours, make sure you're texting us. You can either text CWTJ to 210-794-9898, and you will get insider tips and stuff as we are implementing in the moment, things that are probably going to take a while before we make a podcast episode about it, so you get it in the moment. And if you're in San Antonio, just instead of texting that, text property tour, and you'll be notified as soon as I put out what property we're going to go see. And this afternoon, I might be going to do a tour. So just make sure you text property tour to be notified, and you get to walk the properties with us, ask questions, and see what it is that we're doing. So with that being said, guys, this wraps up Coffee with the Johns for the month of April. Stay tuned this weekend. Maybe not. At some point, we're gonna have the market update. I just
probably early, early
never
next week. No, I thought it last night. I was like, shit, I never got to that this week.
So we'll get it to you this week at some point. So, but make sure that you go SA Market Update and sign up there to receive the market update. That's gonna be going out at some point this week. So, with that being said, guys, thank you all for watching, and we will see you on